She walked onto the set, smiling. She would walk off it furious. What began as a calm daytime conversation would unravel into one of the most uncomfortable moments this show had ever aired. No shouting, no insults. Just one question Meghan Markle wasn't prepared to answer, and one host who refused to back down. The studio lights were warm, almost forgiving. Soft gold tones reflected off the glass table, and the mugs sat neatly arranged, as if nothing unusual was about to happen. The audience, used to lighter banter and carefully guided conversations, settled into their seats expecting something familiar, safe, and predictable. Meghan Markle sat upright, hands folded lightly, an end of her posture practiced, expression calm but alert. She wore the kind of composed smile that looked effortless on camera, but required constant control. Across from her, Whoopi Goldberg leaned slightly back in her chair, glasses low on her nose, listening more than speaking. That alone was unusual. The segment opened smoothly. They talked about public life, about scrutiny, about the pressure of being constantly discussed by people who had never met you. Meghan spoke in complete sentences, carefully chosen words, her voice even and measured. "I think what people don't realize," she said, "is how exhausting it can be to live under a microscope where every intention is misread." Whoopi nodded slowly, not in agreement, just acknowledgement. "That's fair," she said. "Being watched all the time will do that to anyone." The exchange felt civil, almost warm. Meghan relaxed slightly. Her shoulders dropped a fraction. This was going well. This was familiar territory. But Whoopi didn't jump in with jokes. She didn't soften the moment with humor. She let the silence sit just long enough to matter. "You've spoken a lot," Whoopi continued, "about feeling misunderstood." "Yes," Meghan replied quickly. "Constantly. And you've also said," Whoopi added, "that criticism itself has become a form of harm." Meghan hesitated just a beat too long. "I think when criticism ignores context," she said, "it becomes something else." Whoopi leaned forward now, not aggressively, but intentionally. "Here's where people get confused," she said calmly. "Because disagreement isn't the same thing as cruelty." The room shifted. Meghan smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes this time. "I agree," she said. "But that line gets crossed very easily." "Does it?" Whoopi asked. "Or does it get uncomfortable?" A ripple moved through the audience. Nothing explosive had been said, but something had changed. Meghan adjusted her hands, fingers interlacing tighter than before. "I don't think discomfort should be the price of telling your truth." Whoopi didn't interrupt. She didn't rush. "No," she said. "But sometimes discomfort is the result of hearing a truth you don't like." Meghan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I think that depends on who's speaking. And who's being listened to." Whoopi replied. She nodded once. "That's exactly what I want to talk about." The camera cut to a wider angle. The mugs. The table. The calm set that suddenly felt too quiet. Meghan glanced briefly toward the audience, then back to Whoopi. Her voice remained polite, but the edge had arrived. "I'm very aware," she said, "that certain people feel entitled to judge experiences they've never lived." Whoopi didn't flinch. "And I'm very aware," she replied evenly, "that sometimes power wears the costume of pain." The silence that followed wasn't scripted. Meghan blinked. "I'm not sure what you're implying." Whoopi met her gaze direct. "I'm asking whether accountability feels like an attack when you're not used to being questioned." A murmur moved through the studio. Meghan's smile disappeared completely. "I've answered questions for years. I don't avoid them." Whoopi raised an eyebrow, not challengingly, but curiously. "Then let's keep going." The producer signaled to move forward. The segment wasn't over yet, but something had already cracked, and Meghan knew it. The applause cue never came. It wasn't planned that way, but no one in the studio felt comfortable clapping. The air had thickened, heavy with words that hadn't been said yet, but were already understood. Meghan shifted in her chair, crossing one leg over the other with more force than necessary. She leaned forward slightly now, signaling engagement, but also defiance. "I think what's happening here," she said, her voice still smooth, "is that people expect a certain kind of response from me. And when I don't deliver that, when I don't perform pain the way they want, it becomes suspicious." Whoopi didn't look at her notes. She didn't glance at the producers. She kept her eyes on Meghan, or she said quietly, "It becomes inconvenient." Meghan inhaled sharply through her nose. I've spent years being told how I should speak, she replied. How I should feel, how grateful I should be for things that came at a cost most people don't see. True, Whoopi said, but you also gain something most people don't. Meghan's lips pressed together. And that means what? That it complicates the story, Whoopi answered. And say what you want about people, but they don't like stories that ask for sympathy while standing on a stage. There it was. Meghan straightened her back. I didn't ask for sympathy, she said firmly. I asked for understanding. Whoopi tilted her head. Understanding usually comes after honesty. Meghan let out a short, humorless laugh. Are you suggesting I haven't been honest? I'm suggesting, Whoopi said, that honesty doesn't mean control over the narrative. The audience shifted. Someone coughed. A mug clinked softly as a hand trembled against the table. Meghan's tone sharpened. With respect, people have told my story for me since the beginning. I simply took it back. And when people questioned it, Whoopi asked, they attacked it. Meghan shot back. Or they questioned you, Whoopi said calmly. Which isn't the same thing. Meghan leaned forward now too, mirroring Whoopi without realizing it. It's easy to say that when you're not the one being dissected daily. Whoopi didn't raise her voice. That was what made it unsettling. I've been dissected, she said. Just not protected by silence. The sentence landed hard. Meghan's eyes flickered. So now this is about privilege? She asked, her voice tighter. Because last I checked, no one here knows what it's like to be inside my experience. Whoopi nodded slowly. And last I checked, experience doesn't exempt anyone from scrutiny. The producer's voice whispered urgently in Whoopi's ear. But she didn't break eye contact. Meghan exhaled, visibly annoyed. I came here to talk, to say my truth, not to defend myself against insinuations. And yet, Whoopi said, you're defending something. Meghan's hands moved now. Small gestures, controlled but sharp. I won't apologize for protecting my family, for setting boundaries. Boundaries are healthy, Whoopi agreed, but they don't come with immunity. The word immunity hung in the air like smoke. Meghan shook her head. This is exactly the problem. People want access. When they don't get it, they call it manipulation. No, Whoopi said evenly. They call it contradiction. Meghan's eyes hardened. Which contradiction? Whoopi paused. Not for drama, but for precision. You say privacy matters. But your story is everywhere. You say you want peace. But conflict follows you into every room. A low murmur rippled through the studio. This was no longer a conversation. It was a dissection. Meghan's composure cracked. Not fully, but enough. So what is it you want from me? Whoopi answered without hesitation. I want consistency. And I want honesty that doesn't need applause. Meghan stared at her. The silence stretched. I don't think this is fair, Meghan said finally. Whoopi nodded. Fair is rarely comfortable, and neither, Meghan replied, is being judged by someone who doesn't live your reality. Whoopi's expression softened, but her words didn't. I don't need to live your reality to see when someone is fighting the mirror instead of the world. That was the moment. Meghan leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, fully closed off now. The warmth was gone. The segment was still live and the break was minutes away. But Meghan Markle was already deciding whether she'd stay until it arrived. The break light stayed off. No commercials. No relief. Just cameras. Silence and two women who had stopped pretending this was an interview. Meghan remained leaned back, arms crossed, eyes fixed forward. Not on Whoopi. Not on the audience. But somewhere just beyond them. As if already imagining the exit. Whoopi noticed. You okay? She asked gently. Meghan turned her head slowly. I'm fine. I'm just trying to understand why this feels less like a conversation and more like an interrogation. Whoopi didn't smile. Because questions get uncomfortable when they stop being predictable. Meghan's eyes flashed. So that's what this is. Unpredictability for ratings. A few people in the front row inhaled sharply. Whoopi leaned forward, resting her elbows lightly on the table. No, this is what happens when someone who's been listened to for years finally hears something they don't control. Meghan let out a breath that was almost a scoff. You're framing me as someone who can't handle dissent. That's not fair. And it's certainly not accurate. Then handle it, Whoopi said. The challenge was calm, direct, unavoidable. Meghan sat upright again. I have handled it. Relentlessly. Gracefully. While being attacked from every angle. Whoopi raised an eyebrow. And yet, every disagreement becomes an attack in your version of events. Meghan's fingers curled slightly against her forearm. This was the moment where restraint became effort. You don't know what it's like. Meghan said, her voice lowering. To be misrepresented constantly. To be reduced. Whoopi nodded once. I do, she said. I just didn't build a brand around it. The words landed like a dropped glass. Somewhere behind the cameras a producer mouthed cut. But the director shook his head. Meghan stared at Whoopi. A brand? She repeated. You think this is a brand? I think, Whoopi said evenly. That pain becomes currency when it's packaged. Meghan's composure fractured. Not dramatically, but unmistakably. That's a cruel thing to say, she replied. Especially from another woman. Whoopi didn't flinch. Cruelly isn't asking hard questions. Cruelly is letting power go unchecked because we're afraid of being called insensitive. Meghan gave a short, sharp, defensive laugh. So now I'm powerful? That's interesting. Whoopi gestured toward the cameras. The set. The global reach. You walked into this room with influence most people will never have. That is power. Whether you want to claim it or not. Meghan shook her head slowly. This is exactly why people don't speak up. The moment they do, they're punished for it. Whoopi's voice softened. Just slightly. No. They're challenged. And that's not punishment. Meghan's voice rose for the first time. You're invalidating my lived experience. The sentence echoed. Familiar, rehearsed, heavy. Whoopi held her gaze. No. I'm refusing to be managed by it. Silence pressed against the room. Meghan's breathing changed faster now. Shallower. This is not why I came here, she said. I know, Whoopi replied. You came to be understood. But understanding doesn't mean agreement. Meghan stood halfway. Sat back down. Then stood again. The chair scraped softly against the floor as the camera zoomed in. This is hostile, Meghan said, now fully standing. And I won't participate in something that feels deliberately undermining. Whoopi remained seated. Then say that. Don't dress it up as principle. Meghan's eyes narrowed. I don't owe you anything. Whoopi replied immediately. And that is the first honest sentence you've said all morning. The studio froze. Meghan stared at her, stunned. For a moment it looked like she might say something explosive. Instead she exhaled sharply. I think we're done here. That's your choice, Whoopi said. Just don't confuse leaving with winning. Meghan turned toward the exit. No one clapped. Not because they were told not to. But because no one knew what reaction was safe anymore. As Meghan took her first step away, Whoopi spoke again quietly. Almost sadly. Control feels like strength, she said. Until the moment you lose it. Meghan stopped. She didn't turn around. The camera held on her back as the studio lights burned. Everyone understood. The next move wouldn't be words. Meghan stood still for 3 seconds. Not because she was reconsidering, but because she was calculating. The set behind her was silent. No voices. No rescue. Just space. Then she reached for the microphone clipped to her dress. Her fingers hesitated for half a second. Long enough for the cameras to catch it. She unclipped it. The small click echoed louder than any argument before. She placed the mic carefully on the glass table. Not tossed. Not slammed. I won't continue in an environment that thrives on misrepresentation. Meghan said, still facing away from Whoopi. I came here to share truth. Not to be dissected. The words sounded rehearsed. Her breathing didn't. Whoopi didn't stand. Didn't interrupt. She simply watched. Meghan picked up her notes. Thin, almost symbolic. And took one step toward the exit. Then another. The audience remained frozen. Uncertain whether to clap, to boo, or to do nothing. She reached the edge of the set. Just before disappearing behind the curtain. She stopped and turned back. For what it's worth, Meghan said. Her voice steady but her eyes sharp. I expected better from you. Whoopi lifted her chin slightly. For what it's worth, I expected honesty. We both leave disappointed. That was it. No flourish. Just truth spoken plainly. Meghan blinked once, then turned and walked off. The curtain closed behind her, and the studio finally exhaled. Whoopi remained seated, hands folded in front of her. The empty chair beside her wasn't dramatic. It was awkward. Real. She looked into the main camera. "Well," she said, neither smiling nor frowning. That was unscripted. A ripple of restrained laughter moved through the audience. Not relief. Not approval. Just recognition. "This isn't about sides," Whoopi continued. "It's about conversation. And sometimes conversation ends before we're ready." She paused. "And sometimes people leave when the mirror stays in place." No applause followed. The camera slowly zoomed out. No music. No graphics. Just a cut to black.